All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to RoxFilm After Hours. Well, it's not really after hours, but we are here and really excited to be here with two great films, Last Night in Rozzie and Lean In, which is part of our evening program tonight. And we're really excited to have the producers, directors, and actors that were part of that film. And we're going to have a little conversation about each film. We're going to have each film talk about their film, and then we're going to have a larger conversation about the themes that are part of the film, which is a lot about around mental health, about family, and around community. So let's start off with Last Night in Rozzie. So Ryan, Sean, Neil, whoever of you wants to start us out here about your film. So tell us a little bit about it. Tell us about how you came to make it, and then we'll go from there. So welcome.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Thanks for having us. And it's great to share the Zoom with Stephanie and Canaan. Always love seeing Neil and Ryan. So thank you so much. And RoxFilm, we're really proud to be a part of the festival. So thank you so much for having us. At the center, so just a little bit of Last Night in Rozzie. At the center of the film, for those of you that haven't seen it, it's really about this relationship between two kids, Ronnie and Joey. Ronnie is played by Neil Brown Jr. who's joining us here tonight. And they're bound together by just a really traumatic event that happens when they're just kids. And after that, their lives go in totally different directions. But Ronnie gets called back to his hometown of Roslindale by Joey when Joey's on his deathbed and asked to sort of reunite Joey with his estranged son. And the thing is that traumatic event, it affected them both very differently. You know, Joey sort of went down the rabbit hole of addiction, abuse, and he sort of treated himself really terribly. And Ronnie just tried to outrun that pain. He was just sort of trying to bury it and put it all behind him. And when he gets back to Roslindale for that first time in so long, all those old memories, all that pain starts to come back up and resurface, and he gets re-enmeshed in these relationships that he had long forgotten and tried to put away, and sort of that sort of gets exhibited in lots of really deep, dark stuff that Ronnie goes through during his return and while he's on this sort of mission to reunite. I'll hand it over to Ryan because he's like kind of the inception point about how we got this film made and how we got it all going.
Thanks, Sean. Yeah, this story is something I wrote years ago. It was actually the first script I ever wrote, and had a lot of rewrites, since as happens. But it's the closest to my heart because it's very personal in terms of my experience of just growing up with a single mom, feeling out of place in Roslindale where I grew up, kind of leaving at a certain point, and having a lot of trauma, in my past, and just a lot of chaos, not knowing where you stand and stuff. And so this movie was something that, Sean and I have been talking about this for years, and we ended up making a short film first that I got to act in, so my vanity project, which was really fun and wonderful and a great experience. And, did some festivals and stuff, and we learned a lot, about it. And really it was like the impetus for it was I became a dad. I grew up without my dad. And I was like, I had the script, and it's about that. It's about so much, but it's like, it's a big part of that experience for this main character, who there's a lot of me in that main character. And once I became a father, like my first year, I was like really overwhelmed with a lot of stuff that I had buried for so long. And I just was like, man, I need some meaning in my life. I want to be a better father to my son. And part of that was like telling the story and, and dealing with that and getting help for myself so that I can, end the cycle of that harm that happens. And so making the movie was so important. And so after the short, Sean and I, we made some changes, and we started figuring out, can we get this thing done, and it's a whole other story to talk about raising money and developing, but we did it. I'll just put it that way. We obviously did it. Neil can give you some colorful language about the budget.
It's an indie. It's an indie.
It is. And we just, you know what I mean? Like, we took a sponge and we got every cent out of that indie. And I'm so grateful to Neil for taking the lead in this film. We don't have this film without Neil. Absolutely. He took that role, and I mean that absolutely, brother. Like, you took it, and he led this from the beginning as the number one, on set, with his attitude and his desire to just be amazing and prepared and also make everybody feel great, and he's phenomenal at that. So, and not to mention, he just blew it away. Like, the character work that he did in this was so good, because I'll be honest, it's not an easy character at all. And when he went through it, and he made it look easy. So I'm so grateful.
Venmo you that money for saying those things.
That's right. Venmo, that makes show off. Let's do it. All right.
I mean, Neil, you were a totally conflicted character. I mean, there are so many pieces in this character that we could spend a whole hour just sort of like breaking apart, as well as in Stephanie and Canaan. But do you want to add anything about your involvement in Last Night in Rozzie and sort of how you came to this project?
I was just it was my hiatus from my show, and we always look for something cool to do during that time, because I really don't like rest.
Right.
Especially, while I have the energy, I want to use it. And they a friend of mine, Alan Maldonado, who we get mistaken for each other, had told me about this movie, and he actually got cast in the movie. Then he couldn't do it, and I knew about it. And then but my management sent the script. I had been getting some scripts that I wasn't quite happy with, so I had my wife and my niece go in separate rooms to read it, just to see what would happen. And within 10 minutes, they both independently burst through my door. I'm like, what's going on here? You got to do this. This is dope. And I was like, cool. And then I read it 3 times. I fell in love with it, simply because I understood it. It had identity issues in it. It was something, being a mixed kid growing up with trauma issues, things, stuff that I've been through, because I'm an open head from the hood. And it was just a very honest story. It was a very human story. And with having to lead the, a mixed kid that was 3-dimensional, which is something unfortunate on my other show, Insecure, to be doing, like, be a part of a show, a series that's like showing, people of color as these like fully fleshed out, like,
right,
beings that have like flaws, and, for all the things that they want to do good, even if they're your heroine, you still, are messed up, because it's a very human thing to do. So it's a very human story. And what was going on with the mother, what was going on with just like him being in that space and having to go back. I really identified with it. And I talked to Sean on the phone for hours, and we just clicked, and I trusted him, and I knew I had to do it. And I was thankful that they would allow me to do it. It was my first lead. So first number one.
Wow. So your first number one lead.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. That's amazing. Right. So Canaan's clapping. Yes, exactly. No, it was really, being a Bostonian, it was great. It was great to have that character. It was great that you guys stayed true to getting from one place to the other in the realistic time frame that it takes when people shoot in Boston. That's not always the case. But yeah, so we'll talk a little bit more about your character after we hear from Stephanie and Canaan, because we definitely, for the two of you, for Canaan and Neil, I mean, just playing these characters that were flawed, that were 3-dimensional, that were struggling for something that was sort of like taken away from them in childhood. I mean, I think that's a really important conversation to have. So Stephanie and Canaan, do you want to talk a little bit about Lean In?
Yeah, for sure. So a little bit about Lean In. It's the story is about a man holding on to the past, how he learns to understand that letting go, being vulnerable will set him free, giving him and his family a sense of healing and strength to move forward in the right direction. Really wanted to touch on that because, I mean, I just thought it was just truly important. One, first, I went to the African American Film Festival, Martha's Vineyard, and someone told me when I was writing, someone told me truth is stranger than fiction, And before, when I was writing, I was always writing things that maybe I couldn't relate to, or try to make up an interesting story. And then I just thought, let me write about something that I'm going through, and things that I'm facing in my life, my own life. Once I started to do that, maybe I'm having conversations with people, and I start to see that other people are going through similar things that I'm going through, and whether it's Insecure, whether it's other movies, whether it's any other films, TV shows, I always reverted back to films that that I saw myself in, that whether it's a situation, whether it's a person, whether it's a character. That's something that really always hit me and always left me watching a story, maybe just pulling me towards the story that much more. I think one of the biggest things that I really tried to pull out was, especially from a male's perspective, of the stigma of showing vulnerability, the stigma of expressing yourself, expressing how you feel. Like we're all going through something. Like we're all battling something, and that's something I wanted to shine a light on. I thought in the film, the main character Kai, his wife Sid, I wanted her, from a female perspective, to really portray the idea of someone that is there for you, but someone also that is telling you the hard truth. All right, I think as in society, females are or women, it maybe could be seen as easier to express yourself or be vulnerable or whatever it may be. And I wanted Sid to really play a part in being an anchor for him, but pushing him. I thought that was very important. I know there's women in my life that have done me to do that, and really to open up, whether it's relationships, whether it's family members, teachers, coaches. I thought that was extremely important. And the fact that Stephanie and her team at Pure Dice Films were able to, from the full, really being able to have me be a part of like the full process, from the casting to where we're going to shoot it, to what we want the characters to look like. I thought they handled that just so well, just from a professional standpoint. And just the first day that I actually even showed them the film, or showed them the script, and really, when we shot it and when we did the editing, and when she first showed me the first kind of director's cut, I was just in awe and just amazed, and just going to be more happy on the finishing product, because it was literally exactly what I told them initially when I sat down with them. And I think from a production standpoint, what more can a director or writer ask for? So I thought that was huge. And the last thing before I pass the mic to Stephanie, I think it was very also important for me, because I have an athletic background, football, played in the NFL, played for the Steelers, played for the Giants, grew up playing football, so there was always an aspect of, you can't be hurt. You can't be weak. You got to be strong. You got to be tough. And I think, maybe that has its own, we talked about trauma, that has its own trauma, on the football field, that probably could relate over to someone's personal life. So that's something I wanted to touch on, because, there's really, after I'm done playing, there's really no need for me to be battling through everything on my own. Like, there's so many more resources. I can lean on somebody, and talk to someone and open up. In the film, I talked about how, in order to heal, you got to reveal. And that starts with expressing yourself. So that's another really big piece of the film that I wanted to get out, and just really kind of make it a talking point, right? To be able to talk and to open up, and to be willing, like, to show up. So that's what I got.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So there are so many things you touched on, but Stephanie, I'm going to let you.
Yes.
I need a pen because I need to write it down, but maybe I'll remember it. But there are so many different things that you're touching on, as far as family and revealing, and both of you in your films did that beautifully, and that's why we really wanted to put them together, because I think you tell this incredible story of which Black people don't do. You don't seek help. You go to church, or you go to do these other things, and you don't, we battle these mental health issues, and they just keep getting buried and buried and buried. And so for both of your films, you brought that forward in a way that it creates an opportunity to have these conversations, which are really important. So I just want to hang that out there while, we hear from Stephanie, but just thinking about going back to that conversation once we hear from you, Stephanie.
Yeah, of course. So, yeah, Canaan and I and our team were fortunate to, work on this project, and it was a great story from the beginning, just in the aspect of every type of person going through something and not seeking out the help. And I know that Canaan was very specific on the male, and that was something that all of us can relate to. We all have, a brother, a father that, don't show their emotions, their feelings. And it's like, oh, that's, the way it's supposed to be. You're not supposed to, really show your emotions and be that person that can really talk to somebody. And during our conversations and just production and everything, we were very transparent and just like, okay, what do you think about this? What do you think about this character? And really just going in depth of what was needed to bring this film to life, and make sure that he had everything, including like even the main character, he had everything that was needed to portray that character and bring out, those feelings and those emotions that are real. So it was such a great project, such a great film to work with, and definitely it was time crunch as well. I know he was talking, Ryan and Sean were talking about the budget and things like that, and we were just like getting things done, and we know how it is. So it was just an amazing experience with Canaan as the director, and making sure we had everything that he needed for the film, and shooting it in 2 days and making it happen. And it was just a great experience. And we made sure that, we had everything that he needed. So we were very happy with the outcome, and happy with all the cast as well. We did it from beginning to end, and we made sure, Canaan was throughout the whole process, and making sure that he understood that this was his as well. As a production company, some people, kind of like to just take everything and make it their own, but it was Canaan's, and it was definitely a partnership in making this film what it was.
There are so many themes in here. All right, so I want to touch on, because this is important too, is around the funding of this, right? You guys are making non-traditional films, right? You look at Last Night in Rozzie and you're thinking it's this buddy movie, and Neil's character, like I'm thinking, yeah, he like got out of Rozzie, and and he's big in New York or wherever, and he gets a call and he's got to go back home and someone's dying. Oh yeah, this whole story. And then the whole, if you haven't seen it, shame on you. You should have seen it, because we're going to reveal some stuff. But, is that he has this deep-seated mental health issue when he starts burning, and you're like, whoa, wait a second, what is going on here? That Ryan and Sean, like you're revealing this. And, I just want to sort of unpack that a little bit, because Stephanie's talking about, right, like funding, like and Canaan, it's like these are the stories that no one's signing up to say, here's $10 million, like make this movie. I think this is great, and these are the stories that need to be told. So let's talk about that first, about how you like how these movies came about and the funding issue. But then I really want to talk about this mental health issue, and why you all thought it was so important, especially Ryan. You cast Neil, so Neil is really your character, and I want to know the choice that you made to cast Neil, an African American in this role, when your short was not originally that. So you know what, we're gonna go with that first, and then we'll talk about funding. So let's talk about that and your choice to do that, because I think it's really important. And then I want to switch to Stephanie to talk about, why and Canaan, about why this was important to make sure we're focusing on African American men in this issue. So let's start with Rozzie.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's a hard one. You know, it's one of those
Yeah.
ones where it's like, you know, when we decided to make that choice, it became like, well, why? Right? The movie was white people, and now you have somebody of mixed race who's going to play the main character. And throughout the process of the short, we were looking for ways to heighten the story, you know, to make it a more interesting story, to make it have more effect. And there's something, and by the way, I've seen a lot of movies, Boston movies about a bunch of white people. I've seen them. And this was another one. And I wrote it that way because that was my experience. You know, I grew up the street from the projects on Glendower Road, and there were black people in the projects and there were white people up here. And it was and never the two shall mix except in school. Right. And it was such a weird feeling, you know, in the neighborhood. And I, you know, I had such great friends in school that I never got to play with outside of school because they were bused and I was bused, right? And so we were never in the same neighborhoods. And I felt out of place with my friend. I'm an Irish kid around a bunch of Irish white kids. There's not a lot of difference there, but there was enough. Kids will find that thing to make you different, right? And so I was a guinea for like a day, right? Because I'm a little bit Italian. And that was the thing. Like, so this is one day that I remember very vividly of my experience with my friends. And we all messed with each other all the time, but there was nothing that was like stood out so much as being outcast with a name like that, which is nothing like an African-American experience in Boston, right? Or anywhere. So I was like, and honestly, I think I talked to you, Lisa, at the Hangout the other night when I saw the Adam Jones story, the Baltimore Orioles player who was at Fenway Park, and he got called the N-word. And I'm like, this is still happening? You know what I mean? As a white guy, like being like, this is, come on. And like, by the way, you're making Boston look horrible. And it's not that racist and all this stuff. And it really just opened my eyes. And so a couple of things came together. One was like, I don't want to make a movie about a bunch of white people in Boston, you know? And that's something that Sean and I both talked about as well. It's like, can we do something different? Can we make a character, you know, can we have this main character have a different experience than that without screwing it up? Because I don't want to speak for anybody either. And so we did a lot of research, and we were like, for me, I felt like I have a mixed cousin. I have a lot of friends and family. I did a lot of interviews, talked to a lot of people that are close to me. I talked to total strangers about their experience in Boston. It was very different from mine. So it's like, we just took that and we said, how can we take this same character and give him a slightly different experience? Grew up with his white mother, you know, which was my experience. So it was very close in that, but it was always like a different thing. So it's like making him feel different there, and having that stress, you know, especially, and that love-hate relationship with Boston when you leave, you know, and being a Red Sox fan and then seeing what happens when, you know, Adam Jones gets called a name like that and still like rooting for your team. And it was like, so I wanted to just kind of add that into the subtext of his experience. So, you know, the movie's not about race, but race is in there everywhere.
It becomes part of it.
Yeah.
It absolutely becomes part of it when you put Neil in that character. And then we all see Boston in a different light.
And I'll just jump in because it was up to him. Once he got cast, it's like, we need to see what he thinks of this. We need to see where he wants to go with this. Does this make sense? You know, and that was a huge step for us, you know, because we weren't going to tell him how to do it.
Like, but one of the things about Rozzie is that, and it's the same with Lean In, is it's a universal story, right? So you can be in LA and look at The Last Night in Rozzie, and people are going to be like, Rozzie, what is that? You know, I mean, we all know because Rosendale is Rozzie. But really, the story is really universal about a family, about a kid who's lost, about you know, leaving your friends and trying to make sure you compartmentalize. We all compartmentalize, right? Until all of a sudden it's like boom, like, oh wait, there's like alarms are going off, right? It happened in Lean In when it was like, why the heck? Why don't you want to go talk to somebody? Well, why do I need to? You know, and for you know, your character, Neil, it was like, you know, constantly hiding that issue that you brought with you from childhood, right? And that's what I think was really interesting about both of these stories, is that I could relate to them. The next person next to me could relate to them. And I want to know how, for both, you know, for you all who played the character, like, how did you bring that forward? And how were those experiences part of maybe your experiences, or finding those experiences in order, because they were very real?
Well, I was very fortunate that, as I said before, it was a very human story. And so it was, much to your point, it was universal. Just a good story about like a dude who was running away from his past.
Mm-hmm.
And the levels of armor that he put on himself to convince himself he was good. Because we have different pieces of self, right? And a lot of times with trauma, we kind of create a different personality to protect that other person, the vulnerable, right? And that guy becomes the thing, and that was there. That was inherently there from the moment when the movie opened. You saw it. Even this guy, he had it all together. He was decked out, suit in New York, which was a whole other thing too. Like we talk about the duality, talk about being mixed race,
Duality, yeah.
Right. Well, this Boston guy who went to New York, and which the slow thing that you do if you move from Boston to New York, because I'm from the East Coast, I'm from the Southeast, that accent starts to bleed into like this New York thing, right? And so you don't sound like you're from Boston as much as you do anymore. And by the way, a black guy in Boston doesn't sound like a white guy from Boston, but this was a black guy raised by a white mom who with white best friends. It was a whole, like, there was so much in the subtext to play with. And then within that writing, stuff like when he had Ronnie put, when Ronnie was sleeping in his car, but he had him put his ID and everything on the
Right,
dashboard.
because right, as being a black man in America, put your ID on the dashboard.
That's something I know. That's something I do. But that was written in there, and I was like, okay, these white people.
Ryan,
I'm good. I can do this movie. They know little tidbits, little things, even like with the accent, little things with like the issues with his mom and how he kind of like clapped back with her in this weird way because they were actually part of each other, but he was like not completely her. He was something that he didn't even know. It was just so much in the subtext. It was so much to unpack. I just found it fun, and I just wanted to do it right. So, when Ryan, this is what I was saying when I talked to Sean about it. The story just really boomed in my ears, and like,
yeah,
I was like, yo, they get it, especially with like, just the part about trauma and hiding and armor, and then also because I get panic attacks. I have mental health issues. I'm born with them since was a kid. And I know I have panic attacks and whatnot. And so I was able to really identify because I had created personalities to protect myself.
mm-hmm.
And that's why I was a fighter since I was 4 years old. I was a knucklehead. I was real quick to bust you upside your jaw. The little dude was gonna jump on it. That was me. And like, so I understood it like in a visceral, like at a visceral level, like. And they both, Ryan and Sean, really helped each scene for us to unpack all of the stuff that was going on that wasn't being said in the moments in between the moments, which I thought was like very honest, especially for a mixed kid coming from Boston and going on in New York and stuff like that. I just thought it was dope.
Yeah, I mean, I think a really important part of that is surrounding yourself with people who, in doing work with people who understand what it is you're trying to get across. And I think that, for Ryan and Sean, I think, right, as, like, even though the story was written a little bit differently, those little nuances are really important. So for Canaan and Stephanie, I mean, that your relationship, it seems like it was sort of the same thing, like understanding exactly what you wanted to get across, what you wanted the character to as Neil's talking about, like have this armor on you and not willing to take that armor off, because if you take that armor off, you're totally vulnerable. And there are like just so many levels of this as an African-American man, as just like as a man. Like you're supposed to be, strong and not need any of this. And then, and then the other through line are the women in your films are the ones that were the strongest, who pushed your characters to really find themselves. Canaan, anytime.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and you're spot on. And I think there is that shield that we put up, and to touch on a little bit what Neil was referring to of, you know, whether it was Neil or Ryan, I think it was whether, you know, something along the lines of where we even create a character like to protect ourselves, I think at a young age. I think that's something that, you know, maybe that a man or carries on, and if you don't work through it, maybe that inner child or inner character will protect you when it's really time to like open up and be yourself. And I think that was like the real narrative that I wanted to get across, and to bring it back a little bit about the mental health in regards to the therapist, where when the main character went to go see the therapist, from my experience, growing up as a Black man in the world, in America, I had the same stigma of therapists as every other Black dude and Black dude out here, right? So, you know, almost you don't go see a therapist, man. You don't go talk to nobody. You crazy? What's wrong with you? You know, so that was something that I grew up with. I was fortunate enough at the University of Virginia, where I played football. The athletic program had a sports psychologist that the athletes could utilize, and even there, it was always a stigma. You only talk to him if you're in trouble. You only talk to him if, like, you know, someone's grades aren't right, their grade is slipping, you know, this person then failed some type of drug test, they need to go talk to the therapist, sports psychologist. But for me, I was going through something academically that I got advice to go speak to the sports psychologist. And my last 2 years, I went to go speak to sports psychologists about 2 times a week for 2 years straight. And that's when I really realized the power of opening up to someone like a third party that's not involved in the situation that you can open up to. And the biggest thing that I realized with that was the questions that he would ask back to me, right? I'm telling him information, I'm sharing information with him, and the information, and he's just asking me what do you think that means? Well, is that something that you did intentionally? Just the questions that he would ask me over time. I saw myself grow as a man, as a student, as an athlete, as a person, as just everything seemed to enhance. That's why I wanted to even share that, to, if I can even lighten the blow or lighten the stigma of, okay, this is a Black dude in the film that's going to see a therapist, going to talk to somebody, and look how he acts. Look how, not even how he acts, how he feels in the film after he spoke with somebody, right? You know, he had such a hard time. He was suppressed all his feelings, that he has this beef, some friction with his brother, that he can't even go talk to him. And you know, with that message, I wanted to be you know, when he did go talk to him, and, you know, his wife was right there with him, that, you know, he was you know, all it took was a conversation. And I actually wanted to portray that it was like you know, it all it took was a 60-second, 2-minute conversation for them to get right, and they were all good. And, you know, I wanted to almost be like a little bit of debate of, really, that's all it took? You know, they were beefing the whole time, and they just had a simple conversation. And I wanted to be yeah, that's all it took. That's all it took to just, like, that's the movie. Just lean in, right?
Well, that's exactly it, right? And that's why we paired the two together, because here in Lean In, they did that, and Rozzie, they didn't, right? It's sort of like, it's just, and it's sort of, hopefully, is this sort of eye-opener that we all maybe need, that, you know, that other person to say, you're okay, you're going to be okay, but let's help you get to this other place where you can be okay.
100%, 100%. I couldn't agree more. And just even from it was just also a reminder that it's so easy to have like a beef, or like be petty over something so small. And I think from a male perspective, even having the thought process of, man, well, I can't talk first, because if I talk first, then he wins and I lose. And then, like, this is taking a step back of,
right.
Like, and once you grow older and start to understand yourself and understand that it's not that serious, it's like, well, what do we win, lose? Like, when did this become a game? Like, this is, like, we shouldn't even be competing. This should just, like, it should be all love, you know? And I think that's what I wanted to really hone in on of the message, because even at the end of the film, he said, I wish we could have done this earlier. We could have saved so much time together. It's like,
Yeah.
man, hey, like it's never too late. Like, we don't need to wait until tomorrow to take a small step today. Like, we're good. Let's just move forward. And it could still all be love. So I wanted to really, let that be portrayed.
And you know what? Yeah. So go ahead, Sean.
I just wanted to piggyback on that, because what Canaan's talking about is something that I think we really took to heart, and that's it's that, when you're messed up, when you're broken, when you've got problems that you aren't dealing with, it's not just like keeping it to yourself only affects you. It doesn't just affect you, right? Like, and that's something like a man thing. It's like, no, just leave me with my own business, right? Like, I'll take care of me. Like, don't worry about me. But the truth is that if you're messed up like that, you hurt people you love. You hurt the people around you. And, like that trauma isn't just about you. It's about, like, your brother. It's about, your family. It's about the people who are in your life also being affected by it. So when you don't get that help, you're actually, you're creating like this ripple effect of the trauma. It goes on to hurt others and people that you maybe not intending to hurt.
Absolutely. Sean, you're spot on. And even to bring it back to the beginning of my film, I think Sid, the main character's wife, did such a great job, because one of the things that she said to Kai, the main character, he said, look, it's okay if you're hurt, but like, we just got to do something about it, because like it affects both of us. He's like, it affects both of us. If you're hurt, it affects me too. If I'm hurt, it's going to affect you. Like, we're a team. Like, really emphasizing, like, we're a team. Like, we're yin and yang. Like, I need you, you need me, if we want this to operate like the way that we believe it can. So,
right.
Yeah, you're spot on.
I mean, yeah, and that totally. So, Ryan, can you respond to that, because this is your, Rozzie's your film and sort of your trajectory in a sense.
I know. I mean, I think that there's so much fear there for someone trying to be fearless. There's so much fear, to look at this thing. I mean, I love what you said, Canaan, about like, I can't talk first. There's just so much resistance to, just being okay, because for a lot of us, that if we have mental health problems, and I've been going to therapy forever, and you mentioned the burning thing. I'll cut to that too, because it'll be a nice segue. I never burned myself. I'll just start with that. I thought about it for this, just for research, but I didn't. There's this, when you grow up with trauma, when you grow up feeling like you're not safe, you feel less than. That was my experience. And it's like, I need to constantly do something to fix myself and my life and my mom. And I have to do something. It's either that, or I need to completely escape and just destroy myself, with drugs, alcohol, whatever. And we need to like look at that stuff, but when we start there, it's so hard. And so, like, emotions are dangerous. It's like, I can have anger. Anger is great. Like, that's powerful. But what happens is, I got one tool in my toolbox, and it's a hammer, and I'm using it everywhere. Right. And it just doesn't work. So, like, anger can really work for me in certain situations, but it can cause a whole lot more problems than it just fixed.
Yeah.
In sports, like, with athletics, it was like, yes, it's all anger and stuff, but you're not going to tell somebody like, I need a hug, in the huddle. It's so tough. And yet, maybe I probably have, but just being able to access that vulnerability is huge. And I'll just say quickly about the self-harm stuff, because that's, that the secretive self-harm, that thing that we do to ourselves because we just don't, believe that we're good enough. And it didn't come from us. It came from the experience. It's not our fault to even feel that way. And that's, but it is our responsibility today to get help for it. And for me, like, we wanted to give Ronnie something to show that. And it was hard to find something that's cinematically, that hasn't been done before, too many times. I mean, he was drinking, like, that's, and like, everyone's like, yeah, but people drink all the time. Like, that's self-harm, but it's like, nobody sees it as that. So
right.
So I had him like, because I have been known to hit myself in the past, and it's a really sad thing that I've done, and I admit this to you vulnerably, because it's horrible to feel so bad that you do that, and not a proud, like, not something that you talk about, but but I'll regret saying it. But I mean, it's like that thing that it's almost a reflex. Like, there's no need for me to do it. It's just I didn't even know, and I was so mad and upset, and I didn't want to hurt anybody else, and I'm tired of breaking stuff, and I just hit myself. And it's horrible, and so when we put that for Neil, for Ronnie's character, it looks ridiculous in a movie, just so you know.
Right.
Like,
Right.
so even reading it on the
Fine.
script, yeah. So we were like, and I did a lot of research, and I talked to therapists, and I was curious about burning, and I found that is a thing, that people will take a butane lighter and they'll heat it up and then turn it off and they'll stick it on their arm, and it might start off as like a macho thing, and it's like, look what I can do. And then it's like you're doing it on your own because you're just trying to dull all that emotional pain.
I mean, I don't know if you all thought about this when you were making your movies, that, I'm going to go talk about my movie, and we're going to talk about, we shot this angle and we shot that angle. That's not what we do here at RoxFilm. Sorry. We pull apart the themes. People want to hear about that. So I so appreciate your vulnerability to talk about this, because really, your films are so important to be able to have these discussions, and they should be used for those discussions, right? And if you're going other places and people are like, yeah, that was a great shot, and I love when he like cut into this, and there was that flashback when they got in a fight, and the whole idea of mental health gets washed over, then people are missing the point, because both of these are so important for, not just African American, brown, but it's for everybody. I mean, all of us are holding on to these things and not seeking help, and from our childhood, and not being able to build strong relationships, just like in Ronnie's character, where it was easier not to just build a relationship, to walk away from things, than it was to continually feel the pain. And in Lean In character, it was just like, go talk to anyone because I can handle this myself. But I think both of your films have told us, if nothing else,
May have froze.
That was the moment. That was the
That was a good clip.
That was
a good
the moment I was waiting for right there.
Lisa.
Lisa, are you back, Lisa? There you are.
freeze! Oh my God, do I seriously freeze?
You have to complete this sentence. Both of your films have told us, if nothing else.
Cute.
And is she gone again? No, you gotta finish it. You gotta.
No, I'm here. Wait,
Okay.
whoa. You didn't hear that? That was like the ultimate, like, both films have taught us, if nothing else, that it's okay to not be okay.
Perfect. Yeah.
It's okay to not be okay, and it's okay to seek help. And I just applaud you all for because it's Ryan's vulnerability. Am I frozen? No. Okay. It's Ryan's vulnerability, it's Canaan's vulnerability that have brought us to this space. And I just think, for us here at RoxFilm, I mean, that's why we screen the types of films like yours, because they create conversation. You look at it and you say, and we put it together. We say, we're going to put Lean In with Rozzie, because we want to show people that, yeah, it's okay to get help. And we also want to show you a film where someone's not getting that help. And let's figure that out. So hopefully people will get that message. And if they don't, they're going to watch this Q&A and see, oh, that's what we're supposed to do.
Well, yeah, I mean, thank you so much, Lisa. I mean, I think I speak for everybody. We're just so thrilled that you get the film, and that you speak so eloquently about it and communicate these deeper messages, because these are the good combos, like these are the really good ones, the ones that we try to have with people, but we don't always get to. So thank you so much for what you're doing here, Lisa.
Oh, good. We appreciate that.
And I just want to ditto that yeah, absolutely. Like you really cut to the heart of these films, and we can talk nuts and bolts and you can talk inside baseball and all this stuff too. But at the heart of both of these stories is heart, right? It's that experience and that humanity. And it's so important to refer to that. And yeah, I'm glad to be able to talk about this with you and with Lean In as well. It's been great.
Yeah, I mean, it's why you guys make films. You know, it's why you act, and I mean, you know, for Neil, it's like that's why you look for these roles that are going to give you a character that is three-dimensional and can have an impact on someone who's watching and going, oh my gosh, that's me. Like, how can I take what I just saw and translate that into a way that I can move forward? So I thank you for that too.
I literally do this job for to affect people, and good, bad, or indifferent. I do it. That whole thing is to affect people. And if you can, like for a movie like this, if even one person seeks help because of it, then I've done everything that I want to set up to do.
Absolutely. And Canaan, I'm sure you feel the same way.
Absolutely. You know, ditto everything that everyone just said. And honestly, Lisa, just even having this platform to us be able to show the films, but also to be able to talk about the Q&A here is huge. And to piggyback on what Neil said, you know, it's been great to get feedback of the film and, you know, people's messages. And but I think the one thing that's really hit me is people reaching out and saying, man, I haven't spoken to my aunt in 8 years. You know, we had a falling out way back when. We're getting coffee on Thursday, like because of the film. And I'm like, I think if that doesn't whether humble you or really take a step back of like Stephanie said, it was so much fun to create the film. But when you get messages like that, it's like, man, like that's what it's all about. Like, yeah, you help this one person in this battle of life of everything we're all going through. That's everything. That's huge.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, and just to go on that as well, just having people, you know, come to Canaan, come to us and say, you know, it really changed our mindset on things, you know, on, you know, the outcome of a conversation and just having a conversation, even just like calling that person up and saying, okay, you know, can we like change this? Can, you know, we go through our differences? Like, you know, it was something so small. Are we gonna, you know, waste 10 more years of our life and not being, you know, having that conversation or being in each other's lives? And it happens in many families and many friendships that, you know, you do one thing and you're like, oh, well, I'm not going to be the person to have that conversation. I'm not the one who's going to reach out. And that was a big thing. And that's a mental thing right there. That's a mental, like you're going to put yourself through it as well. Yeah. You know? So that was a big thing. And the film portrayed it. And it was just, you know, those conversations are really important. And even as a woman, you know, sometimes we're too verbal, but you know, but still it's having those conversations with people that don't, you know, have, you know, that first step, those wives, those women, and really being like, okay, it's okay to talk to me, or your sons, or, you know, your children, like it's okay to express yourself.
Yeah, I think that's so important. So we're gonna have to end this. We could talk forever. We have a filmmaker hangout that's going on that just opened up right now. So I'm gonna jump to that. But thank you all so much for your work, for creating films that are so multi-layered and gives us the opportunity to be entertained, but also to be educated, you know, in some of the things that are just so important in our community and for ourselves. So, so I thank you. So, you know, we look forward to your next projects. I love that. It's like, what? I just did this. Should I like stop? Like, but we do. We look because, you know, clearly, yeah. There's Ryan on his backboard writing the next thing. But we do look forward to that. So thank you again for all of your work. And we hope to see you around the rest of the fest. If you can join in on Film Hangouts, that's great. We'd love to see you. If not, we have an incredible social media team that will be harassing you enough. that will be following you to make sure we have your handles so we can make sure that we can do that and elevate and tell people about the things you're doing. So thank you so much. RoxFilm thanks you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank
And
you so much.
we will talk soon.
Yep. Keep it up last night,
Thank you
Rozzie.
so much.
Thank you.
It was a
Thank
pleasure.
you, everybody.
Thanks.